must admit, I was just trying to anticipate some. I was like, what could I use that's near me right now if I had to tether a phone to my head? I think that's where I would be.
It's tape.
Yeah, get my tape out.
I got some resistance bands, like nice and stretchy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you got a big sock?
Big sock. That's got to be quite a big sock.
Yeah.
Yeah, a hat that you can kind of wedge it into.
That's it.
Yeah, I could put a baseball cap on and just kind of stick it in.
I'm always in awe of the women that you see that wear hijabs and then they have their phone like stuck into.
Yeah, they tuck it in there.
Yeah,
that's skills. That really is.
That's like first generation hands free.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just worried I'm going to like take a swig of water at some point, just go into a coughing fit. That would be very unfortunate.
You said
that's
what?
why it's good to have a gallery, because they'll just cut you out. Do you know what I mean? They'll just be like,
say,
okay, Dave's gone.
Well,
we lost Dave.
I was in a work call at one point, and I actually did start choking on my water, and it all kind of came out my nose. And I was just like panicking, turning off cameras, running around.
No.
So,
this is worse as well, because it'll be really. It's close on your face now as well, so if you do have water coming out your nose, we're going to see it very clearly.
Yeah. I didn't know if afterwards I was supposed to apologise, but it seemed like nobody had noticed, so I just didn't say anything.
You died on a call and everybody was just oblivious.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Practice
Have you all seen...
Hello and welcome to today's panel, Being Black in Gaming. So today this panel is part of the hashtag #MyRoots campaign from TikTok, a really great push on social media and also in real life on billboards, which explores the African and Caribbean roots of some of TikTok's creators. They've got some really great names on board, and today we've also got some great names on board for our panel. We have got some of the best people in the UK gaming industry here to give you some of their expertise. So I'm going to let them all introduce themselves. So I'll start off with you, Des.
Hello, my name's Des Gayle, and during the day I'm the production manager at Fellow Traveller, which is an indie publisher. And during the night I make my own games at my own studio called AutoG. I'm also on the BAFTA Games Committee with Elle, which is awesome. I'm the chair of Games Aid. I'm on the Yuki board, and I'm also a founding member of POCinPlay, which is a diversity movement that's focused on increasing representation of people of colour, both on and behind the screen.
Please do check that out. Really fantastic organisation. Charlie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi. Well, how do you follow that? I'm Charlie Harris. I am a senior producer working in the Searchlight team at SEGA. I've been in the industry quite a long time now. Before I worked at SEGA, I worked at Activision. So I'm all things production.
I like that. all things production. You've got it handled. Lauren, I'm going to throw to you. Lauren's had to call in because we've had some technical difficulties. It's 2020, you know what it's like. So she will be phoning in today with a gorgeous static image for you to look at.
Hello, I'm Lauren and I work in game and PR. I'm at a PR agency called Premiere, which is an entertainment agency, but I specialise in gaming, and I've worked with clients from in the indie sector all the way through to AAAs, and I've worked in gaming for the last 10 years.
Fantastic. Lucky you've got such a lovely voice, Lauren. Jide, how about you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey everyone, my name is Jide Agbalaya. I'm a systems infrastructure manager at SEGA. Hi Charlie. And I've been in the gaming industry for over 10 years.
Fantastic. And finally, we have Dave. Tell us everything we need to know.
Hi, I'm Dave Springer. I work at the Multiplayer Guys as a software engineer. I've been there for just over a month now, and I've been in the gaming industry for about 5 years.
Fantastic. Well, as I said, did I not promise you that we have brought the best of the best? So today's panel is going to be a look at what it's like to be black in the UK games industry. In particular, this year we've had a census from UK, who's the gaming trade body, that's seen we only have 2% black representation within the UK games industry. So it is pretty unusual to be a black person in this industry, and today we're going to be delving into what that's like and what we'd like to see change. So first of all, I'm going to start by asking our panelists to talk a little bit more about their careers and how they got into games. Des, I'll start off with you again.
Cool. Okay. So getting in it's not super interesting. I got super lucky. I was working at McDonald's when I was doing my A levels, and then when I got towards the end of those, my friend's older sister, her husband was working for a company called Lego, and he was looking for some QA testers, and he was like, "Oh, do you know anybody?" And she was like, "Hey, Des can spell his name. It's only 3 letters, it's fine." And then, went for an interview, got the job the next day, and started the week after. So, like, not many barriers. I didn't even have to open a door, just had to press a buzzer. So that was cool. And then, I've been around. This is year 22 for me now. And, so I went from, like, Lego to EA to Microsoft, dropped out into kind of, like, indie development for a bit. Smaller studios, and really lucky to work in Barcelona. Made some terrible games for Adidas. Popped over to Germany for a bit, and then came back to England, where I finished up with Square Enix, making Just Cause 3.
All right, I'm definitely going to come back to those terrible games. They sound interesting, but for now, I'm going to jump over. Jide, tell us a little bit more about your journey.
So my path was a little unique because I work in the tech sector. My big battle was getting my foot into that door. Being representation in that sector is quite ubiquitous, so I don't really attribute any of the shortcomings about getting into that industry about my race. It was more so my qualifications and my experience, which I lacked at the time. I did some micro courses. I went to uni. I dropped out. I didn't want to tell my mum, because if you know anything about African parents, their son dropping out of that education is like a cardinal sin. So I literally just pivoted and I took another course, completed that, and when it came to actually getting into the gaming sector, it was actually uncharacteristically easy for me, because I saw a job, I applied for it, and I got it. I was very cavalier in my job interview, because I was so sure that I wasn't going to get the position because of how many people are applying for jobs in the video game industry. And not to sound too conceited, but I was actually told that I was like head and shoulders above my fellow applicants after the fact, not during. So I didn't really have any issues. But yeah, it was a pretty smooth transition from the investment banking industry, which I was in before, to the gaming industry.
Oh, I like that. Very smooth little drop in there. Just saying, head and shoulders, just bringing that up. I like it a lot. We've got to celebrate our successes. Charlie, tell me a little bit about your journey. Oh, Charlie, I don't know if you can hear me or not. I was just going to ask, tell us about how you got into the games industry.
Oh, Mike is...
Oh dear. Looks like we might have lost sound to Charlie, unfortunately. I'm sure she's got more to say than it sounds like right now. Lauren, I'll jump over to you. Tell us how you got into your role.
So I studied PR at uni, not really knowing what part of the industry that I wanted to go into. But I first got a job working in TV PR, and that's where I started, and I did that for a year. And then I went back to do my final year at uni, and then was out there as a graduate, trying to speak to my connections that I'd had where I'd done work experience. And I went for a role, didn't get it, and they said, well, we think you'd be quite good at this role on the games team. And I was a bit like, oh, I don't know about games. I hadn't played a game in a few years, but loved them up until being a teenager, and then got that job, and then loved it ever since, basically. So it wasn't what I sort of chose to go into, but it worked out really well.
Oh, I love that. I really enjoy finding, people who kind of just not necessarily fell into it, but found it as an alternative route and then loved, this industry. Finally, Dave, you tell us everything we need to know about how you got into games, please.
Okay, so I was coming up to the end of college, and it started to become abundantly clear that I was either going to have to join the real world and get a job or go off to university. So I took a course for games technology at Bournemouth Uni, and through that I kind of started to find that the programming side of things was what I was most interested in. When I finished, I took a year off just to kind of work and to spend a bit of time at home, because I knew I was going to move towards London to try and find a job. So then I moved in with my partner's parents, spent 3 months just applying to basically every job that I could, and eventually I found a trainee role for QA. That got me in at Warp Digital. So, at that point it was owned at Curve Digital. And whilst there, I overheard my boss saying that he was looking for a trainee coder. At which point I approached him and said, that's kind of exactly what I want to do. And from there I got to move on into a junior programmer role. Then the company kind of split off and became Warp Digital, so that kind of moved away from the publishing and more just the porting side of things. So I was there for about 4 years, started moving more towards code development as well as the ports, and then about a month or so ago I went and joined the multiplayer guys, so it's a little bit more of the code development and a strong focus on the online multiplayer.
Dave, I'm going to come straight back to you. It sounds like, you've had a really clear focus in your career. You knew exactly where you wanted to go. You've found the roles that you needed to kind of develop your career as you moved through it. So for you, what's it been like being a black person? Because it does seem like, you've gotten where you wanted to go. So far I can't say that I've really felt that my race has really come into account for anything, really. I think it's kind of like Des had said about being lucky. I've just managed to position myself to be in the right place at the right time. As I said, I spent a lot of time just kind of applying to everywhere available, and it was a case of literally being in the room when an opportunity presented itself to move from QA into a programming role. Des, obviously, as was mentioned then, you talked about being lucky. Do you think that is something that kind of plays into what it's like to be a black person in the games industry, that quite often we have to be good and lucky?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it's unique to us in video games. I think it's everywhere, right? My dad. This is very cliche, but like my dad always used to say to me, you're gonna have to work twice as hard to get half as far. I was like, and when you're a kid, you don't understand what your parents are saying to you, and he's like, oh, cool, yeah, that's my dad. And it wasn't until maybe 2 or 3 years in where I kind of realised, I was like, oh, okay, I kind of get what he means, and not through anything direct, even though I'm sure it has come into it a few times, and not even just about race, about age as well. There's been some opportunities that I was very well suited for and didn't get, and you can say, oh, okay. And then that's when things start to play in your mind a little bit. Similar to Dave, when I was working at Lego doing the QA, I almost churned out because I was like, right, this isn't really for me. And this is where the luck comes into it. My boss was just like, hey, I'm getting the sense you're not really feeling it. I was like, no, I'm probably going to leave. He goes, well, we've just had this new kind of like encryption stuff come in. Do you want to have a go at doing that? And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And yeah, that kept me at the company for another 2.5 years. So literally, right place, right time, understanding and kind of, open-minded boss, because, if you look at the bigger picture and think, okay, we hired you for this hole, that means you have to stay in that hole. Like, if you're very unlucky, you get people like that. But yeah, it was great for me, and I never look back. In fact, and just about the working hard bit. So, I always try and do the best I can at things. And so when I left there, I went to Microsoft because of what I did. But then EA actually came after me as a recommendation from the people that made the software that we used. So, it's just those things like, that someone who I didn't even know was just like, oh, you know what? You should speak to this kid. Like he comes up in the forums all the time. A completely nothing movement from whoever it was to being a great step in the career for me. So yeah, you're right. Luck is for me personally anyway. Like that's what's happened. So
I'm really interested in the fact that a lot of it comes down to who you're lucky enough to end up working with, and we'll come back to that in a moment. But we have Charlie back with us. So Charlie, I just want to say hello, welcome back, and
Hello.
Can you give us a little introduction to what your role is and your career journey?
Sure. Hi, Elle. Sorry about that. Bit of a technical problem there. I'm Charlie Harris. I am a senior producer in a team at SEGA called Searchlight, and we work with kind of third-party developers to publish their titles. Really, we're kind of an incubation studio within SEGA, so we're kind of a smaller team within the bigger SEGA sort of business. I've been in the games industry 18 years now, I think, since 2002. I joined Activision as a localization project manager to work on Star Wars titles that they published in Europe. But before that, I was not in games. I was working as a translator and a project manager at a translation agency doing medical and pharmaceutical tech. So it was really a very different move for me. And much like Des, really, I had somebody that I knew that worked at Activision, and a job came up and they asked me to apply for it, really. And a similar thing, really, when I moved from Activision to SEGA, it was really kind of the network and the people that I knew that kind of put that kind of opportunity in front of me. So it kind of nepotism, but not quite. I guess sort of network, really. So yeah, that's me.
Absolutely. I mean, networking, not nepotism. I definitely think that.
Definitely.
So, as I said, it is about people. It is about kind of who who you're working with, who values you in a workplace. Jide, I wanted to ask you, because obviously you started out in an industry that's also perhaps not known for being particularly ethnically diverse. So, how have you found the games industry, to compare to investment banking?
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right about that. In terms of the investment banking, just going back to what I said before in terms of the tech sector, that sector was full of diversity, like many PLC. When it came to when you kind of sort of like broke out of that, that's when it was a different image. In the actual IT department, the like white people were like the majorities, sorry, the minorities, and for the rest of the office, it was a lot of middle class white men. And because my position at the time was as junior as junior could get, it was a little bit condescending sometimes when they were kind of like they'll ask you to like come around and they say that this machine has to be fixed by the time that I leave, and I'm like, you know what I mean? We say you can always sort of judge a person by their character by how they treat people who they feel like they don't have to like treat well. And I didn't really like the industry. To be honest, I didn't even really know what the company did. I always used to say it's an investment bank, but what does that really mean? Pivoting to the gaming industry, it was a lot more diverse, a lot more BIPOC, people of color. It's not. It can always be better, but in terms of just people at many levels, I did see lots of diversity. You do still get to like the top, and it's still like that familiar sight of all middle class white men. But I feel like for the most part, it is pretty diverse.
I think one of the things I sometimes struggle with a little bit with our industry is that because it is, compared to many industries, it is reasonably diverse, it is reasonably liberal, it does skew left wing, that people think, there's no work to be done there. Lauren, is that something that you found? Do you think that we do as much as we can to address a lack of representation?
So I think over the last few years, there's been lots of conversation about diversity, but you can have the conversation, but it's putting things into action. Like, what are you going to do to address those points? So I think that's where the problem sort of comes in. Like, there's loads of talking, but what are you going to do to make it better? Like, what is your company going to do to make sure that the recruitment process is inclusive of lots of different types of people? So I think that's the thing that I've seen over the last few years is, just lots of talking and not enough action.
Charlie, you've been in the industry for such a long time. How has it changed for you? Do you think that we are, moving in the right direction in a more practical way than just having these conversations?
I won't say yes, but I'll caveat that a little bit. I'm not sure whether that is actually kind of a kind of active moving rather than a more kind of passive, kind of societal moving towards more diversity or more. I don't know. I don't think it's something that actively the industry is doing to make that happen. I think it's happening despite what's going on in the industry, and I think a lot of industries are like that as well. Definitely, when I first started in the games industry, I don't think I had another black colleague in the first job that I had, and really, I would say it's only kind of been really in the kind of last sort of 6, 7, 8 years at SEGA that I've had like more black colleagues than I could count on one hand, which is amazing. And I don't think that's necessarily a failure of any of those companies, but I think that we are moving towards, as a society, we're just moving towards having diversity is becoming a conversation that it underpins so many things that's going on at the moment. So it's yes and no.
I feel that's so often the answer in these conversations, isn't it?
Sorry, yes, that's a very political answer. I apologise.
It's not. Do you know what? It genuinely isn't a political answer. It's an honest answer, and that's, I think, at this point, the opposite of a political answer. I wanted to come straight back to you, actually, and just say, when you are the only black person in a company, when you are, the only black person in your department or your team, what does that feel like? How does that make you feel in the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, so I work a lot with development teams. So quite frequently, I am not only the only black person in the room, I'm the only woman in the room as well, which kind of brings an extra layer of being different. I think sometimes there can be a bit of pressure on you as that person to bring this almost this diverse perspective, and you being solely responsible for that. And I think that can be quite a lot of pressure really for people of colour to have to be the diversity champion, or the person who is always bringing it up and kind of getting people to confront it or face it. And I do think that actually it's on like our white colleagues to really also take up that baton and make sure that they're also having these conversations with people, because it can be exhausting to do that all the time.
Absolutely. I thought it was interesting as well that you mentioned the kind of intersection of being a woman and a black person. Lauren, I'll come to you for that. Do you find that makes things, let's just be clear, more, be honest about it, more difficult?
I think I have been quite sort of lucky in my career that I've never felt that I haven't had an opportunity that, say, a male colleague has had. So the places that I've worked, that's always been really good. But then I have been in some meetings where I've kind of felt that I'm not being listened to as much. And these are sort of client meetings, so these are with various studios, where I feel like I'm not being as listened to as much as sort of my male colleagues, because maybe they're not used to, at their workplace they don't have any females within that. So yeah, there are definitely times when, yeah, I feel like being a woman has not worked in my favour, which is, yeah, really sad.
Yeah, definitely. I think when we kind of talk about being black, there's so many different layers to it. That intersectionality is something we can never kind of step away from, because there are so many lenses through which we kind of view that black experience. So I wanted to move on to kind of a look at, as I mentioned earlier, we had the recent UK census, which was a huge, far-reaching census of the games community in the UK. And basically that turned up that we have 2% of the UK games industry are black. That's slightly below the UK average, which is 3.4% in the workplace. Something I was really interested in here was the idea that whilst it's not a particularly low number, 2%, this dropped dramatically as we moved up to kind of more senior positions. So obviously it came up earlier in our discussion today, you know, often there's lots of black faces at entry level, there's lots of black faces coming in through, you know, more inclusive hiring and diversity schemes and initiatives to bring people into our industry, but then they're not progressing. So Des, I wanted to come to you because obviously you are quite senior in our industry. Do you feel that we do have options for progression that, you know, black people have do feel able to reach those senior levels?
I think definitely now there's opportunities around for that. Obviously, I don't know every company and all their situations, but I just want to make a comment on that note that you had. So let's not forget that the UK is a predominantly white country, right? And then the games industry was a predominantly white industry. So all those people who founded it back in the 80s and 90s, like, and please take this with a pinch of salt, like, they're not dead yet, and they haven't churned out the industry. So of course, you know, if you're running successful businesses and you're high up, like, where are you going to go? Like, why you're not going to leave? And it's when you're in these positions, you know, they don't take 2, 3, 4, 5 years to churn out. They take 10, 15 years to churn out. So that's why that natural ceiling is there. You know, they were there first, and they're still there. It's fine. And I think that's what's informing a lot of kind of like mid-career developers to start making their own studios, because the barrier to entry now is like, it's almost non-existent. You know, if you go back 15 years ago, if you want to start your own company and have the tools to do it, you're already looking like 20, 25 grand. That's not there anymore. So I think so there's two fronts. People think, oh, you know what, I've got the skill and experience, I can go do it myself. Therefore, the talent's leaving and not wanting to go up anyway. And then the ones who do want to go up, you know, I'm not going to say there's no opportunities, but I think they are then within a sea of other potential candidates. And I'm not going to call anyone out because I don't know anyone, but like that's when you've got that's when you need to be reliant on the management team to train their staff and make sure, you know, there's no unconscious biases happening when you're doing internal promotions, and even external recruitment as well. So yeah, that's the danger, is when you're staying in and want to go up. And listen, if you're like one of two in a company and none of them are up there on the decision panel, you know, you can roll a dice if you're going to get up there or not. But yeah, I think it's not as clear cut as the data suggests. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave, for you, we discussed before that you've had, you know, quite a linear path, quite straightforward. You know exactly where you want to go. So how does it feel for you looking at an industry where we do have that lack of representation in senior roles for, you know, a number of different reasons?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because you have to start thinking about, you know, where is it that I am going to go. But yeah, I mean, I haven't been at a ton of companies. I've worked with a few for like the work for hire stuff, but yeah, I'm not seeing a whole lot of people of color in kind of the higher up roles. But yeah, I guess that's part of kind of why I want to be here. I want to work my way up. You want to, you know, be that face someone looks to when they go for a job interview, and you know, seeing a person of color opposite you kind of makes you think, like, actually, you know.
Oh, I think we've lost another guest. I mean, this is the most 2020 panel of all time, but I'm going to jump over to Charlie and kind of ask, what for you has kept you in this industry? Because something that we've heard time and time again, something, you know, I've come across when doing work around, you know, the retention of black people in the games industry is they kind of burn out. Sometimes it's that they're coming up against overt prejudice. Sometimes they're coming up against, you know, banging their head against the ceiling and being unable to progress. You know, sometimes they just feel unsupported. So what has kept you in this industry for so long?
I think I've been very fortunate not to have experienced any particular, well, certainly no overt racism or prejudice in my career, which definitely helps, obviously. I think what keeps me in this job, and certainly what keeps me doing what I do every day, are the people. I think the games industry has an amazing group of people working within it in all kinds of roles and in all kinds of companies and doing all sorts of amazing things. And it really is just so innovative all the time. And like, you know, sometimes I like I said, I work quite a lot with developers, kind of helping them make their games kind of from scratch, really. And I see so many like brilliant ideas and brilliant kind of innovations come through that I think that's the one thing that really keeps you it keeps you fired up and it keeps you motivated, wanting to keep kind of coming back and pushing things forward. So yeah,
I love that. Actually, I think it's kind of a nice spot to stay in and explore a little bit. What are the good things about being in our industry? You know, when have you felt supported as a black person? When have you, you know, felt that this is somewhere you want to stay, whether it's because of a workplace or a single colleague or something that you've kind of been working on? Jide, I'll come to you for that one.
I mean, where I work is great. I mean, it kind of like goes to show, because like a lot of my friends have all come from, you know, working within SEGA. I've met so many incredible people. The company itself is quite liberal. We decided to make a BAME platform, a BAME network. Myself, some others, and Charlie, and we didn't get met with any resistance. They were just like, yeah, like totally. Here's some budget. You know, they supply us with everything essentially that we need to get it running. My boss is an amazing enabler. If you've got any sort of ideas, they will always field them. You know, if you have a bring your dog to dog to work day, you're going to get a little bit of like a resistance. But for the most part, any ideas are championed, and like I said before, there is quite a lot of BIPOC or POC representation within the company. Our department in particular is probably like the most diverse in the whole company, and I just feel like the conversation has been started by us, and they're receptive.
You said that bring your dog to work day, like that happened to you and you were a tiny bit bitter. I liked it. You're like, just for example,
It was my idea.
Yeah, we could tell. Lauren, I'll come over to you. Tell me a little bit about, what's made you feel so supported as a black person in this industry? What for you has, made you want to stick around?
I think it's the people. I think the industry has a lot of nice, supportive people that will be there for you. Throughout my career, there are certain people who have always sort of checked in on me to see how I'm doing with my development and things that I've talked about, just seeing if I need any help. So I think that's really made me sort of stick around in the industry, because when I worked in TV, I didn't really see that as much as I do in games. Although I haven't been in TV for years, so I don't know, that may have changed. But yeah, I think for me it is the people, the network that I've been able to build up. They've just been really supportive and sort of back any ideas that I have.
Dave, how about you? What for you are the kind of highlights of being a black person in this industry? When have people, treated you the way you'd hope all black people in our industry were treated?
Well, so it was kind of bittersweet me leaving the last company I was at. I really enjoyed it, but obviously I had this new opportunity that was great. And one of the things that my old company was looking to do was start making charitable donations. And so obviously I was on my way out, but they asked me if there was anything in particular I thought would be a good thing to donate to. And I chose the Black Minds Matter charity. Just because obviously mental health stuff has been very important to me. I've had my struggles with it. And obviously the year that we've had, 2020, there's been some things happening, obviously coming out of the US, that I think has been particularly hard for black people to see. So, it's been a rough year for stuff like that. And it just really meant a lot to me that my former company would, want to do something for me and make a donation to that charity. So that was something that really touched me.
I mean, that's absolutely lovely. And if you aren't familiar with Black Minds Matter, please do go and check them out. Really fantastic charity working on the kind of disparity in mental health provision there is, particularly for black people in the UK. So they are, providing funding for people to go and have to seek mental health treatment and not have to join the kind of, multi-year waiting list. So Black Minds Matter, do please go and check that out. Okay, Dave, you did it. You mentioned 2020 and what kind of year it's been. So I have to talk about it. Obviously, I'm going to say the word unprecedented. I know we hate to hear it, but it has been an unprecedented year. We've had this, renewed focus on Black Lives Matter. We've had this renewed focus on race relations and what it is to be a black person, particularly in the UK today. So, Des, for you, how has this year been? Do you feel like it's changing anything in the games industry?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, there's been a lot of activity. This is true, and I think just to kind of half slip into the last question too, I've just got to give a shout out to my team at Fair Traveller. They were very what's the word? Sensitive, eloquent, I guess. But sorry, there's only 8 of us, so statistically, I'm obviously the only black person. They reached out to me and said, "Oh, how's it going? Are you okay?" And in my true British fashion, I was like, why wouldn't I be? And then, they brought up the stuff that happened, and I was like, oh, cool. Completely a surprise. I was like, that's awesome. And then, they were like, we want to do something. And they were in a danger zone for a minute, because I was like, okay, go on, since I'm the only black person, tell me you want me to validate your idea. But genuinely, they were like, we want to do this, but this sounds pretty rubbish. What do you think? And I was like, yeah, you're right. So we, I was involved with like how we kind of dealt with what we would do as a company. And very similar to Dave, we made some charitable donations, and like all of us, came involved with that. But as part of that process, the key thing we spoke about was sustainability, right? So as you quite rightly mentioned, Elle, it didn't just happen this year. It's going on all the time, and for some reason, these particular incidents happen to spike. So we sort of dug down and thought, okay, let's think about this. What skills do we have that can we make this be sustainable impact? And we reached out to a few organisations, and we're like, okay, can we do some like educational stuff? We've got a limited budget, but we can do these things as well. Just reaching out and finding out what the impact is. And so at the minute, I'd give the industry probably a 6 out of 10. There's a couple of companies that are doing great work. Like, there's loads of funds around, but it's not just about the money. Like, you need the follow-on support and stuff with that as well. And again, it's all down to budget. And some of these companies just haven't been afraid. They're like, look, we've got thousands, so we're going to do this, and this is how we're going to make it stretch out as far as possible. Bigger companies, they've obviously got millions, and they're doing similar things. And one thing I will love to highlight is Humble, because they doubled down. So they've got the money and they've got the ideas, like, okay, let's do it. But then they realised, oh hey, we're all not black, and we're going to be running this fund thing. So they purposely went out across the globe and thought, okay, let's get a couple of people who should be looking after this for us. And they went and hired them. So, they've done great. And others, and I don't want to call you out, but like all of you just changed a banner on Twitter and put in a message on your website. It's no good to anybody. You've got to do better than that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and this is something I'm really interested in. When something is actually practical and helpful, and when it's just a PR stunt. Lauren, obviously you're our PR expert, so I'm going to come to you and say, what do you want to see companies doing, and when does it just smack of, this is just a PR stunt, this is just, putting a fist as our Twitter photo and saying we're done?
Yeah, so I think like when Black Lives Matter happened, a lot of companies, not just in games but across the board, they put up a black square, or they tweeted Black Lives Matter to say that they're showing support. But that was just, that's kind of like just saying to like the outside world, we support you, but not putting anything into action. So I think it needs to be that that companies look back at their sort of recruiting process from junior levels right up until to senior levels. I've heard from like a lot of friends throughout the industry that when they are looking for people to recruit on a junior level or to get in for work experience, that they have just sort of asked their friend's son or daughter, and it's like, well, that's not really fair. There's a whole pool of talent out there that you're not even tapping into. You're just going with the easy route so that person's son or daughter can have an opportunity. So yeah, I think it's like sort of looking at things like that and making sure that you're opening it up to a pool of people from a diverse background.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is something to be said, isn't there, about this idea that it's not often overt prejudice. It is about a really great exec recently talked about checking your circle and realizing that, do you know what, you might not be racist, you might be somebody who truly champions black excellence and black people coming into the games industry, but actually you just don't know anybody, and you can't, you don't actually actively look outside your circle. You just think, well, I tried, I did a tweet where I said I really encourage black people to apply, and you didn't actually, reach any further than that. Jide, as someone who came into games, from another industry, how do you feel that we should be kind of reaching outside of the games industry to find new perspectives, new voices, whether it's black, whether it's, another perspective that we just don't consider or represent very well inside the games industry?
It's a tough question. I personally don't, in terms of like the video game industry, I personally don't see a lot of diversity actually in video games, unless it's a sports game, or if it's a create a character game, or Def Jam Fight for New York. it's mostly strong white male protagonists, and I strongly believe that seeing yourself in a media is the most important step into getting young people to want to participate in creating that media, whether it's music, or whether it's movies, or whether it's video games. There is a logistical matter as well. A lot of these big video game companies, they don't have offices anywhere near locations of like high percentage of POC. But showing young, enthusiastic, POC kids in school that there's a place for them in the games industry is paramount.
Absolutely. I mean, and on that point, I've got a question for all of you, and I realise that when you're like the fifth person to answer it, it can get difficult. So if you don't have anything to say, please do just tell me, and I shall move it along. But Charlie, I'm going to start with you. What is your advice for somebody who's watching this panel, or who's, seen something that's inspired them to join our industry, and they're right at the beginning, they want to get in? What's your advice for them, whether that's as a black person or whether that's just as somebody who wants to enter into a pretty competitive industry?
Well, that's a really hard question. And I get asked that a lot, and I never know what to say. I guess that kind of knowing a bit more about the industry and having a bit of an idea about what it is about games that you're interested in, because there are so many careers in games, right? There are so many things you can do, like even just the five of us, the six of us here, we do so many varied things, right? And you can still be part of the games industry and not work necessarily as a developer or the kind of sexy stuff that can be done. So I think having a bit of an idea about what you want to do and kind of focusing yourself towards that might be helpful. And then I think, I don't know, like reaching out to people. I have people kind of like reach out to me on Twitter and like ask me for advice, or ask me about something that they're working or whatever, that kind of stuff. I like to do that. Not everybody likes to do that, so I'm not putting everybody here up to do that, but kind of trying to kind of build up your network, because I do think that can be part of kind of getting a foot in the door, and a lot of it can be about being seen by the right people, or kind of just talking to the right people. So don't be afraid to reach out to people. Most people in the games industry are really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. If they've got DMs open, go ahead. Otherwise,
exactly. If they haven't, then maybe don't push it. But yeah.
Lauren, how about what's your advice for both games and PR?
So yeah, I agree with Charlie. Like, I think that networking is definitely a key part. Like, try and to speak to whoever you can, and when we're all able to go to events again, like things like EGX, there are loads of people to speak to there. Just go and chat to people. But also, I think like work experience, going back to that again, is quite key. Like trying to build up a portfolio to show what you can do. And like, I always think that people should be paid for their time as well. So try and find some paid work experience if you can. But then I think it's also like not just on people trying to get into the industry themselves. It's also companies need to like offer paid work experience a lot more than they do.
I mean, absolutely. And that's something else that's key, that I would just quickly add in there is, decide whether a company is going to value you as well. When you are trying to break into an industry, it is easy to feel really desperate to let people take advantage of you, to let people, use you in ways that you're not comfortable with. And that is something that you should be evaluating as well, whether somewhere's a good fit for you. And often, if they want you to do a lot of work for free, big old red flag. So, definitely avoid that. Des, what would be your advice? And also, I'm interested in, you're somebody who often has to seek out talent. So what are you looking for? What kind of portfolios would you expect to see? What kind of online presence would you expect to see from people? What should they be prepping before they decide to throw themselves at the games industry?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo Lauren's point about a portfolio. So, if your students now watching, if you can code. If you can draw something. If you're a designer, it doesn't have to be a game, but you can design like a card game or a board game, anything that you don't need bits and bytes for. And I might be in the minority on this one, but when looking for staff, the CV, oh man, it's got to be tailored and it's got to be concise, because the amount that I see. You've got, seconds, 30 seconds if the space is not right or it's not full. If it's too hard for me to get the information out of your CV, you're going to go onto the maybe/no pile, and then I'll get a CV that's easier to read. But that's it. After that, I want to think, okay, cool, they've got the basics they need. Now, what can they do? And yeah, your GitHub or your ArtStation or your personal website is much more important. And I'm going to be very controversial here. Apologies if you spent money on a degree, but so if you've got a degree versus someone who's got 3 or 4 game prototypes, that one with the prototypes is going to be instantly more attractive, because they already have gone through that process of building something rather than just learning just the theory, which, and forgive me, education isn't going to be completely up to date for what we need. There's no offence to anyone. It's just the technology moves fast, education doesn't. So it's just fact. And then again, I just want to double down on Laura's other point. It's got to come from us. I want to see more apprenticeships, more internships. More outreach from us as an industry. And don't just wait for universities. We need to go deeper, because Jide brought this up earlier. We are also fighting a social construct where parents don't really see video games as a viable career choice. And with all this social input that we have from the media, like TV and newspapers and stuff, you can get to 9-10 years old before you've already decided the route that you want to do. I've been to countless primary schools where, unfortunately, a lot of the girls are just I'm not interested in video games. I want to do something else. I want to be a doctor. So I want to be a lawyer. Yeah, well, doctor maybe not, but lawyer, you can be a lawyer in video games. It's fine. Please give us a chance. So that's that. At 10 years old, that decision's already half made. So we've got a battle to try and bring them on side. And, if you've got obstacles like doing work experience in a leisure centre or a newspaper shop, then, what chance do we have to, to bring the next wave of people through? So, yeah.
I mean, and interesting, I do think that the kind of 2 last points you there really made there really tie into each other. So it is about teaching people that this is a viable career. It is about really championing our industry as somewhere where you can do almost anything. I think that's something that's so unique about the games industry. Think of any career aside from, okay, yes, doctor, but you can do almost any. In fact, you know what? Esports teams have doctors. I take it back. You can be a doctor here too. You can do anything you want to.
That's true.
But part of it is that you can go out and get started without having to sign up for a degree, without having to sign up for a course. You can go and make a game today. If you want to do what I do and you want to be a games presenter, you can go out and set up a YouTube channel and start making content straight away. And I cannot stress that point enough about when you apply for a job, when you turn up for an opportunity, when you DM somebody who definitely has their DMs open, you know, have something to show them. There is nothing stopping you from doing that. So please do go out and try and build that practical experience on your own, so that when you turn up, you know, you're that little cut above somebody who wrote a terrible CV and doesn't have anything else to show. Please, you know, get practical. So, Dave, how about you? What for you are your tips? In particular, I'm interested in how you take that next step in your games career, because that's something you've just done.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd say a lot of what Des said I definitely agree with. I'm not going to go so far as to say don't get a degree. I've got some friends who are in education. They probably wouldn't like it if I said that. But I definitely feel like if I'd come with more experience, if I'd been working on my own stuff in my own time, definitely would have been a much stronger candidate for a lot of the jobs I applied for. But to kind of piggyback off that, I applied for a lot of jobs I was nowhere near qualified for. I basically just went for anything and everything that I thought that might work for me. That's kind of how I found the trainee thing. I applied for it wasn't a senior role, but it was a mid-level role as QA. And they just happened to also be looking into the trainee program. That's why they decided to interview me. And I guess part of that as well is being open to, I guess, other avenues into the industry. So obviously, I started in QA. QA is a perfectly valid career, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. It was programming was what I wanted to do. I kind of knew that I wanted to get into that for by the time I was 30, and I could have just applied for just programming roles, but as I said earlier, I was literally in the room where a new opportunity presented itself. So, you know, just getting in is the most important part, and you know, you might find that you actually love whatever that entry position was. I know plenty of people who aren't doing the thing that they thought that they were going to be doing when they left university. They found something else that they love. So I guess part of it is just kind of being open to the opportunities that are actually there, as well as having to, you know, hunt them down.
I mean, that's a fantastic point. As we said, there's so much to do here. So definitely, you know, always be open to taking a left turn that you didn't expect, because there's a lot of fun roles that you just never hear about within games. A lot that you don't see beyond just the very basic kind of, you can be a programmer or you can do PR, that kind of thing. There's lots underneath those. Jide, what's your advice to anybody who wants to follow in your footsteps?
I mean, getting into the tech industry is easy-ish. It's just, you know, it's qualifications meets experience. If you know, do what Lauren said, you know, take your the work experience. If it's paid for, great. But if it's not, then still do it. That's what I did. Getting into the gaming sector is tougher, but like Charlie said, there are many jobs within the industry. You know, whether it's like, you know, law, operations, HR, sales, IT. So, you know, if you get in, first and foremost, find a sector that you love, and if you want to work in video games, then look at the roles on the websites of these different video game companies. A lot of people have like imposter syndrome. They don't think that they're going to get the position, so they don't even apply. That's what I was going to do. I wasn't even going to apply for it because I didn't think I was gonna get it. But the last thing I would say is that people have mentioned luck on this stream. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Is what I say. So just make sure that you are prepared when opportunity calls.
I love that. That's such a good point. Definitely, you know, it is about being prepared for that door to swing open when you least expected it. So finally, I'm going to finish up by asking you just a totally easy question. If I could just have, you know, one sentence that is something you'd like to see the games industry change that will help increase black representation. So, you know, just if you could just knock out a quick one-liner for me there. I know it's a really straightforward question that definitely doesn't require any thinking time. Jide, I'm going to start with you.
Ah, man, I get to go first.
I put you first because I thought I had to I left you till last time, so I thought, you know what?
It's cool. What would I say? I would say, you know, what we don't need is that we don't need tokenism. We don't want optical allyship. A lot of these companies kind of see themselves as like some like sort of like benevolent, conscientious hero, but they don't. It doesn't involve any risk. They just want your picture for like the company website. So what I would say is actually put action behind words, and actually start to the process of getting people of color within the industry.
Okay, you started us off slightly too well there. That was a little intimidating for everybody else that's going to follow on. Dave, what's your one sentence?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of following on from that, is putting your money where your mouth is, making sure that if you're going to make these commitments, say you're going to do this or that, make sure you actually follow out and be transparent with that. Make sure people know that you are actually hitting those.
Des, how about you?
I mean, I think I just carry on the theme. Yeah, investment of time for the management team, want to change things, investment in training of your current staff, because obviously you don't just want to replace them with us, you want to like have everyone there. And yeah, funds, like, seriously think about it, invest in a scheme internally for your company or a fund for people to apply to, but definitely support other organisations as well. Yeah, just invest, full stop.
Definitely, yeah. If there's one thing to take away today, it is invest in black talent. Lauren, what's your key one sentence that's going to completely change the games industry?
I think put a focus on recruiting black people into senior roles, so that people who are coming into the industry know that there is somewhere to aim for. They're like, oh, there's that person in that role. I could be that someday. I think that would be my advice.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And finally, Charlie, what's your big tip?
Well, Lauren kind of stole my big tip, but I'm going to say it in a slightly different way. Representation is important, right? You can't be what you can't see. So you need to both have people in senior positions, black people in senior positions in companies, but you also need to have more black people in games. So actually in the video games as characters that you can play and that you can see yourself in the media that we're creating. So that's the one thing.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, that was brilliant. Thank you so much. You've all been such fantastic guests. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I hope that, if you're watching at home, that was a bit more of a nuanced idea of what it is to be black in the games industry, because it isn't all doom and gloom. Yes, there are some systemic issues. Yes, there are some barriers. Yes, perhaps, there are areas where you're going to struggle a little bit, but also this is a diverse and inspiring space. It is a space that's more liberal and, welcoming than perhaps some other industries in the UK. And there are lots of people here who want to see you succeed, who want to bring in black voices and black perspectives, who want to see them, in games, behind games, who want to see them succeed in this industry and make it better and more representative than it is right now. So I hope that we've given you both sides of the story there. I hope that there's work to be done, but we definitely want you in our industry. There is space for you here and you can totally succeed. Just look at our incredible guests today, Des, Lauren, Jide, Charlie and Dave. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Being Black in Gaming panel on TikTok. It was a TikTok. I like that a lot. We've got some other great stuff coming up from TikTok actually for you, so we're going to throw to Aviti now. I've been Elle Osili-Wood and this has been Being Black in Gaming.